Who Gets to Decide? A liberty-based podcast that brings a little piece of sanity to a confused society drowning in a culture of craziness. And here is your host, Seth Martin.
All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Who Gets to Decide. This is episode 660, and I am Seth Martin, your host. There I am, for those of you watching on video. Thank you for joining me this evening. Glad you're here and always happy you're listening. You're probably looking at the screen if you're watching this on video going, what the heck is that? And what that is a cancer scan. That's like a PET scan you get if you have cancer. What they do is they put this contrast in you that reacts to some chemical that cancer gives off. I've not had cancer, so I don't know the exact details, but the scan picks up where tumors are located in your body. And so that's a clue as to what we're going to talk about today, because I think this is a very important subject. And given the way COVID went down and how so much of it was kept from the public, what was actually happening, what worked, what didn't work, what was true, what was not true, the whole narrative around certain people speaking misinformation and some people were to be believed and others were not to be believed. I think it's important that we treat seriously other medical related type things, especially when it's something as serious as cancer. And cancer, obviously, it's not like the flu, or it's not even like COVID. It kills people. If you have it long enough, it eventually kills you. And there's some really great stuff happening in the world of cancer, but not in the official world. Okay. So we're going to have to get into the unofficial world a little bit today. And that's potentially problematic. I might not even be able to put this on YouTube, for example. We'll see. We'll see if YouTube lets it go through or not. But again, cancer is something very serious. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody at least that has had cancer or has died from cancer, or it touches everybody, right? And so I just think it's very important that we don't suppress information that could be saving people's lives. And we have to make a disclaimer here that I'm not a doctor. I don't know personally whether or not these things work or not. But what I do know is that it's all over the internet. And there are definitely people that have had very positive results, from slowing it down to complete remission. Okay, so these are drugs that are very safe to take. We're going to talk about ivermectin. We're going to talk about fenbendazole. We're going to talk about mebendazole. These drugs have been around for decades. They're very safe. What we're really talking about today is a repurposed application of these drugs. And really, this all kind of started because of COVID, ironically. Hydroxychloroquine is another one that was shown to have some efficacy on COVID. Ivermectin was shown to have efficacy. Fenbendazole. These drugs specifically are for parasites in your body, okay? Hookworms, roundworms, pinworms, things like that live in people's bodies. But the cause of action, the things that happen in parasitic infections, are also very similar to what happens when you have cancer, and the way a tumor develops and the way you starve a tumor and so on and so forth. These things are very similar. So these drugs have had they've shown to have efficacy in cancer. And this was kind of accidental. There was a study back in 2020, I believe, where a woman was testing cancer drugs, and essentially her mice that she infected with cancer, she put tumors in the mice, got some parasites, and she had to treat the mice or she was going to ruin her whole study. And it turned out the mice survived. The tumors went away, or they shrunk in size, or died altogether. And so this was an accidental thing. And then the first I heard about this, just to kind of give you some background, was a guy named Joe Tippins, who was posting stuff on X and on the internet about his experience. He had stage 4 lung cancer, small cell lung cancer. He talks about it because I have his video we're going to play. And he was literally told to go home, get your affairs in order, and call hospice, line up hospice. And the guy is living today. This is years ago now. This is almost 10 years ago or something. This is a very big deal. And what it means for the cancer industry, I have no idea. What's going to happen to institutions like MD Anderson and stuff like that, I have no idea. In some ways, I don't even care, because the reality is this kind of thing happens all the time in the marketplace, where some new thing is discovered and it wipes out a whole industry or whatever. And that could very well happen in this case. And that, to me, is not even important. What's important is it working on people or not? And does it have any negative side effects? And so I'm just going to expose the audience today to this, because some of you may have not heard this. I don't know. Certainly, I'm going to share it with friends and family. I know some of my friends and family members have not heard this. A lot of people will scoff at this. They'll say, oh, don't you think if this was known in the medical community, we would be hearing about it on the news and Fox News and CNN? Yeah, I do think that. I don't know why there's a blackout on this kind of information, but the information is there. It seems to have real credibility. I'm going to talk to you today about some of the doctors that are working on this and actually treating patients with this. You have to remember, cancer is more or less a death sentence. So and these drugs that I'm talking about can't hurt you. Okay. You'd have to take massive quantities to hurt you. There's no reason not to try it. There's no reason not to do it. And so that's what a lot of people are doing, and they're having great results. And in fact, we're going to cover a couple studies here in today's show. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Joe Tippins' video first, because to me, this is where it all started. This is where I first heard about this. And you when you first hear something, you're like, yeah, you need some data points, right? You want to be able to connect some points and make a trend, or you don't want to just hear one anecdotal story and go, oh, that's a cure. So I first heard of this maybe a year ago or more. And this not Dr. Joe Tippins, a guy named Joe Tippins, who's from Oklahoma, was telling his story. And so I think that's a great place to start. Let's start there with Joe Tippins and his story.
Because I'd already done my own research that once you have wide metastasis small cell lung cancer, you're literally a goner. The 0% chance of survival and 3 to 6 month life expectancy, and I was basically told to go home and get my affairs in order and think about hospice.
Wow.
And the next day, I got a call from a large animal veterinarian in western Oklahoma, who's a college friend and family friend. And he told me this crazy story about a scientist at Merck on the veterinary side who has been doing cancer research on mice, and she had hundreds of mice that she'd implanted cancers in all their body parts, brain, stomach, liver, pancreas, etc. And her mouse population came down with intestinal parasites. And so she had no choice but to save her research. She gave all of her mice fenbendazole. If you went out to any zoo in the world, they bring in fenbendazole by the truckload, front-end loader, head-high piles in bays, because they give that drug to every single animal in the animal kingdom.
And one of the oldest and safest drugs around, right?
Yes, been around for 40 years. And so she did, and unfortunately, or fortunately for all of us, she also learned that she accidentally killed all the cancer.
That was a surprise, right?
Yeah, it's a serendipitous surprise, right?
Okay, let me stop it there, because what's showing on the screen is different amounts of fenbendazole and things like that he took. It's just his recipe, which you can find on the internet now in multiple places. So we don't need to play that part of the thing. But isn't that an amazing story? And thank God he had a friend. Look at the thin threads here. We might have never found out about this if, I don't know, maybe this woman would have screamed it from the rooftops or whatever, but that was doing the study and all her mice were cured of cancer. Maybe we would have found out that way. But what was interesting for this particular guy, he had a college friend that was a veterinarian. And thank God he had his friend that cared enough to tell him about this and put him on it. And you can see the guy's alive today. He's living, this was 10 years ago or something. It's a miracle, really. And lung cancer is particularly difficult. My grandfather died from lung cancer. So this is not something that, it wasn't just serendipitous. This happened because he took action of a particular type. All right, the next video I want to play is a guy named John Campbell. And John Campbell I found during COVID. And John Campbell he's a doctor, but he's not a medical doctor. He's like a doctor of nursing or something like that. But he's an older gentleman and he's in the UK. And he was just a warrior during COVID, digging into all kinds of studies and different things, statistics. And I've watched him a lot. In fact, you can go back and listen. There's many shows I did on COVID where Dr. John Campbell was in the audio. I'm bringing him back. We're going to talk about cancer. I thought this was a really good, this is him talking about a study. So look, if John Campbell is telling you this, you can take it to the bank. This guy is very good. He's very credible. And he's someone who has no ulterior motives. He's just bringing the information. So with that, let's play some John Campbell.
The hypothesis is clear from this and multiple studies. We could be curing, potentially, we don't know, but we could be curing your wife's cancer, your husband's cancer, your mother's cancer, your father's cancer, your son's cancer, your daughter's cancer with ivermectin and mebendazole. Clinical benefit ratios was at 84.4%. Right, 48.4% of the cohort, strongest possible outcomes. Regression, 15.6%. No current evidence of disease, as I said, 32.8%. Disease stability, 36.1%. Only 15.6% of the whole cohort were progressing, which is remarkably good.
Okay, real quick, let's define some of these terms, okay? So the overall benefit out of the people that were in the study, 84% saw some benefit, whether it was reduction in tumor size, complete remission, like there was no tumor at all, to, I don't know, maybe even status quo was considered a benefit. I'm not sure. But only about 15.5% saw no benefit. Okay. That's the big picture here. So let's continue.
Remarkably good. The hypothesis is clear from this and multiple studies. We could be curing, potentially, we don't know, but we could be curing your wife's cancer, your husband's cancer, your mother's cancer, your father's cancer, your son's cancer, your daughter's cancer with ivermectin and mebendazole. Clinical benefit ratios was at 84.
Okay, I guess I recorded that twice or something. I don't know what happened there. I had some technical difficulty. But the bottom line is 84% saw some benefit. And if you combine this with some of the clips I'm going to play from Dr. Makis, William Makis, who's a doctor, I believe, in Canada, and he's an oncologist. And the guy is just everywhere on the internet now. You shouldn't have any trouble finding Dr. Makis. Peter McCullough is another guy that's very active on the internet talking about this. And so I would follow Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. William Makis, Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. John Campbell. There's a Dr. Lodi. I can't remember his first name. I would go to X and I would start following these people if you're interested in this, because it's going to be one of these things where you're not going to be able to go to your doctor and say, I'd like to take ivermectin. Okay. And the reason is these drugs haven't been tested for use with cancer. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to find a doctor that's willing to kind of go outside of the standard of care and work in what they call repurposed drugs. Like you're working in a zone of expertise where they repurpose drugs. There's some drugs, you hear this all the time with drug discovery. I don't know. Different drugs are discovered accidentally because they're looking for some kind of effect, and then they notice there's this other effect. And so then they test it for that and get FDA approval and all that kind of stuff. But all these drugs have been FDA approved, just not for treatment in cancer. And so it's possible that you go to your oncologist and you say, hey, I want to take mebendazole and ivermectin. I want to do Dr. Makis's protocol or whoever. And they may not do that for you, okay? Because it's outside of the standard of care. So in our medical system, doctors, if they operate outside of the standard of care, they can lose their license. So this is a very serious thing for doctors to operate outside of the standard of care. And so you may have to, if you want to do something like this, you may have to contact Dr. Makis or Dr. Peter McCullough or somebody, and you may have to kind of treat yourself. In other words, you may have to tell them how much you weigh, and you kind of take on some responsibility yourself, because nobody can just not, you just can't say you can't put that in your body. You can put, look, I can drink a gallon of bleach if I want to. Okay. It's my body. I can do whatever I want with it. But see, that's different than the doctor having the authority to treat you officially in some particular way. So it may be that you have to work hard to find a doctor that will do this. Okay. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about potentially living versus not living. So to me, and this is the liberty-minded Seth Martin, I don't care about the doctor's standard of care. If I had cancer, I would want to live, period. Okay? Because somebody created some law that keeps me from getting treatment in a particular way, I don't care about that. Okay? So I would just find somebody that is willing to work outside the lines or something. And there are doctors out there that will do that. All right, let's go to the next clip. This is also Dr. Campbell, but Dr. Campbell speaking to William Makis, the guy that we're talking a lot about today. So let me jump into that clip.
I want to enter a completely academic discussion now and look at doses of these drugs. If we start off with, let's start off with ivermectin. What sort of doses might we be thinking about for maybe just give some examples of conditions that where you've got personal experience?
The starting dose that I look at with ivermectin is 1 milligram per kilogram per day.
Quite high. And
it is a little bit high. I always say this is about 5 times the dose that you would use for COVID-19 or a parasite infection, for example.
Yeah. Is this with, what level of cancer is this with? Sorry.
This would be with most cancers, intermediate to high-grade cancers. Now, for low-grade cancers, you could certainly start lower at 0.5 milligram per kilogram per day. And so for a 60-kilogram person, typical starting dose would be about 60 milligrams of ivermectin. But for low-grade, something like CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, that's been simmering for many years, or maybe multiple myeloma, I start lower at 0.5 milligram per kilogram. So that would be something like 30 milligrams of ivermectin a day. And that's more in the range of a dose for a viral infection or a parasitic infection.
Yep. And is that 6 days a week?
That's 7 days a week.
7 days a week. For how many weeks?
So I suggest patients try ivermectin for cancer for 3 months, and I'll tell you the reasoning behind that. And then with a reassessment of some kind, looking at blood work, cancer markers, for example, or looking at follow-up imaging. The reason why I say 3 months is because from my experience, I have seen a response to ivermectin on cancer markers as early as 3-4 weeks. So this is markers like prostate-specific antigen, PSA. We could see a drop in the PSA. We could see a drop in CEA or CA125, or these other more specialized markers for breast cancer, for example.
These are basically chemicals given off by the cancer cells.
Exactly. And you can see those start to drop. Now they're not perfect tests, but they are surrogates for cancer activity, the level of cancer, the level of tumor burden. how much active cancer is there that where these cancer cells are producing these markers, you could see those markers start to drop. And you can actually start to see the activity of the tumors start to drop on a PET scan, a positron emission tomography scan, in about a month. But it takes a little bit longer to start seeing tumors physically shrink, lymph nodes shrink, primary tumors shrink. That takes about 2 to 3 months to see that, to start seeing that on imaging like MRI, PET CT, or CT. So you want to give it a good 3 months to see if you have a response. You could monitor it on the blood markers. Within a month or so, you could start seeing if there is a response. And then after 2-3 months, you could actually start seeing responses on imaging. And I'll tell you, the most dramatic results that I've seen, and I get attacked from both sides. I get attacked from conventional oncology on this, and I get attacked from the sort of health freedom movement on this. But the best results I've seen in my patients are patients who are doing a combination of chemotherapy and ivermectin. And then
Okay, I wanted to play that whole clip because it's very technical. He's using terms I don't use every day or ever for that matter. But I wanted to let you hear him talk yourself, okay? I wanted you to hear him talk and just know that these guys are real deal doctors, okay? These aren't some hacks or snake oil salesmen. These guys care about their patients, and they're very serious about these treatment systems. And so I just wanted to give you a sense of that. Now, the next clip we're going to play, and I know I'm playing a lot of clips, but I'm basically trying to expose you to this concept in case you have someone in your sphere that has some type of cancer that could benefit from this, and just you don't know about it, or at least they don't know about it, and maybe you could share this with them, and it might help them, might save their life, might extend their life. I don't know. I just think it's really important to get this information out there. I've been sitting on it for at least a year, and maybe I shouldn't have been, but it's starting to become, the evidence is now so overwhelming. And you've got official studies. I'm going to share one in a second. You've got official studies out now. Basically, let me back up and kind of tell you what happened. When Trump selected Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head up the, National Institutes of Health, or whatever he does, I forgot what he is, but whatever he is, Secretary of Health and Human Services. When he did this, one of the things he found out pretty quickly is they had all these studies, this backlog of studies that the NIH and the NIAID, or whatever it is, never released. So he's been sifting through these and trying to get them out there. Okay. So these studies have been there, and the government's been withholding it, which I mentioned this to someone the other day, and they go, it's that whole scoffing thing. Oh, Seth, why would the government do that? I don't know. Why does the government do anything that it does? The government, I don't know. I give you example after example of where the government really is not looking out for you or me or any of us citizens. I don't know why this would be any different, right? They don't care about us. They care about their interest. And this is something Professor Zhang talks about, that nation states aren't a real thing. I know we think of them like that, like the United States is a place, but from a political standpoint, the United States is not a real thing. It's a collection of interest. And the American Medical Association is part of that interest structure. And why do they not want this out there? Why did Dr. Fauci sit on it and make COVID-19 the most important thing in the country for God knows how long? I don't know. I don't know the answers to those questions. We may never know the answers to those questions. But what we do know is the government doesn't care about you or me, and they have some interest in holding on to this information and not releasing it. But RFK, when he got appointed to this position, he made it his job to get it released. And I've heard numbers like there's some 400 studies that they're working through to get released and put. You can't just dump 400 studies out into these various journals. There's just not enough room for all these studies. So they've been going through and I think trying to find the most important ones first and putting those out. And incidentally, my wife would always have the Today Show and I've noticed lately it's not on there as much as it used to be. But like on the Today Show or Good Morning America or whatever, almost every day there'd be a new study shows that they were always introducing these new studies every single day. It seemed like every single day. I bet you could go find a montage or something on YouTube where there's and they're inconsequential studies too. Salt causes this, or there's some correlation with something and something else. And most of the studies are not very life-changing. And yet you have these 400 studies just sitting at the CDC or the NIH or wherever they are, and nothing. We don't hear anything about it. And this could save people's lives. People die. It's millions and millions of people die every year of cancer. And it's even more now that the COVID-19 shots have been shown to have this SV40 gene in there. And the SV40 is like a cancer. I don't know. It doesn't cause cancer, but it creates the conditions for cancer. Simian virus, I think is what they call it. And this was found to be in the COVID shot. So now if you go look at, cancers are way up. In every category, cancers are way up. And so we need this. We need this information now. And these idiots in the government are just sitting on it. It's just maddening. All right, let's jump into the next clip here. And this is a show. This lady's name's Joy, and I can't remember her last name, but she's on X all over the place, and she's having all fairly interesting conversations from time to time. And she's got Dr. Makis on her program. So let's play a little bit of that.
Anti-parasitics really have a dozen mechanisms of action. Each of them has a dozen mechanisms of action by which they act on cancer. They act on cancer at the cellular level. They change the cell. They change some of the genetic expression of the cell. So they shut down certain things that the tumor cell produces. It's really fascinating. For ivermectin, it really goes after cancer stem cells. And this is where it is a beautiful addition to chemo, because chemo will kill rapidly dividing cells. So it kills, let's say, 95% of the tumor cells that are rapidly dividing. But cancer stem cells don't rapidly divide. That's not their nature. They sit in the tumor and they wait. And they might start dividing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and they spread to other parts of the body. And that's why chemo is not curative in 98% of the cases. They will always tell you chemo is palliative, not curative. Those are keywords, by the way. When the oncologist tells you palliative versus curative, those are keywords to tell you we can't cure you with chemo. And they know why, because they can't kill the cancer stem cells. And so ivermectin can actually go in and kill those cancer stem cells. That's something that chemo is not capable of doing. That's why we're seeing results with chemo plus ivermectin that oncologists have never seen, because they have never seen.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, these mechanisms of action. These are the mechanisms of action, some of them, not all of them, that are used to kill parasites or rid your body of parasites are also mechanisms of action that work in cancer cell interruption. And so this is what they're finding out, and it has to do with cellular replication and blood, access to blood so the cancer cell can live better or whatever. I don't know all this stuff. I just know that there are a lot of people saying it's working, and there's people like this Dr. Makis who are desperately trying to get the information out there through studies and things like that, but also through these interviews. And there's a lot of positive information. And so to me, it's worthwhile to spread positive information. If we've got something good happening in cancer, and almost nothing good happens in cancer, right? But if we have something good happening in cancer, let's get it out there. Let's save people's lives. Let's help our loved ones and things like that. So that's where I'm at with this. And these doctors are the same way. They're doing the same thing. All right, let's continue.
Cancer cell killing that is so good, and tumor shrinkage that is so dramatic. When you add the ivermectin, you're targeting the cancer stem cells. So that is a fascinating feature of ivermectin. Another feature of ivermectin is it's able to reverse resistance to chemo that cancer cells develop. And so ivermectin will go in and it'll actually change the cancer cells from being able to pump chemo out of them, and now they're chemo resistant, it actually removes the ability of cancer cells to do that. It inhibits those pumps that pump the chemo back out. Now the tumor cell is susceptible to chemo again. The patient gets chemo and the cancer cells are all killed. So again, these are just two of the dozen mechanisms that researchers have found. And this has all been proven in preclinical research. That's why there's over 400 papers on ivermectin and cancer, not because it's something it's a fad or something curious. They've studied the molecular mechanisms of how ivermectin is attacking cancer. And this is where a lot of doctors who make fun of ivermectin or who attack ivermectin, this is really where they show their ignorance of the research. These 400 papers, most of them published in the last 5 years, that go into the mechanisms of how ivermectin is doing this. And same with fenbendazole and mebendazole. Quick example is fenbendazole and mebendazole, also anti-parasitics. They kill different types of worms and parasites than ivermectin does. They shut down glucose transporters on cancer cells. So they prevent the cancer cell from taking up glucose and using it as a fuel source. And that's one of the major ways. Exactly. Sugars. This is one of the major ways by which tumors grow. When they have access to sugar, they use it as fuel, and then you have these rapidly dividing cells that have plenty of fuel to grow. So they shut down tumor growth by shutting down these glucose transporters.
I just think this is incredible. I think this is why this is not on the news 24/7 tells you everything you need to know about corporate media. It's just not where the news is. You can watch Fox News all you want, and you can watch CNN and MS Now and ABC and CBS and NBC, but you know what? You're not getting the news there. You're getting a narrative. That's what you're getting. And we've talked about this numerous times on the show. That's the government's mouthpiece, corporate media, because corporations and the government are hand in glove. They love working with each other because corporations contribute to their campaigns and line the pockets of the politicians, and the politicians get to carry out what they want. The corporate media toes the line, helps with the narrative development and the narrative creation and the narrative. You hear this all the time. Like when you talk about history, they talk about whoever wins the war, the victors get to write the history. But a lot of history is written by just a compilation of the stuff of every day, how certain events unfold over time also becomes history. So how much of the history you think you know, do you actually not know because of the way it's curated and developed by these corporate media outlets and the government? To me, this is just one more example. And this one's a deadly example, right? Cancer is killing people for sure. I don't know how many people a day are dying from cancer. It's probably in the hundreds or low thousands or something, tens of thousands a day or something like that. But it's killing people for sure. And this should be all they're talking about on Fox News. That maybe a little bit of the Iran deal and things like that, but they should be talking about this probably at the top of every hour to make sure everybody knows about it. And you probably save a lot of lives. That's my guess. All right, let's go to the next. This next clip it's a nurse, and she's talking about a specific kind of anecdotal case, and she mentions a doctor named Ilyes Baghli. Ilyes Baghli. And Ilyes Baghli has similar experience with these types of drugs. And they talk about something really important here. Like if you go talk to your doctor and you get mocked or whatever, the audio is not as good. You'll have to listen very carefully, but I wanted to play it because I thought it's something you could encounter if you go inquire about this. That's why I wanted to expose you to it.
Video.
You know what gets me? Getting ready to show you a testimony of somebody that had their stage 4 brain cancer go into remission. When he told his doctors about ivermectin, they mocked him. Imagine going to your doctor and saying, hey, there's this other treatment that I want to check out, and they mock you. Dr. Ilyes Baghli's hybrid orthomolecular protocol for cancer is putting people into remission, and nobody's talking about it. The American Cancer Society, crickets. The media? Complete silence. Why is this not being talked about? Why are we not having conversations? Why is it that when a patient goes into the hospital, they are not given this choice? Where's the informed consent? Here's his testimony.
Ivermectin is the most surprising tool that I've personally used during brain cancer. They mocked it, but I studied it. I used it. What I discovered could save lives. When I was first diagnosed with grade 4 diffuse astrocytoma brain cancer, they gave me 1% chance of being alive in 8 months. I didn't do chemo, I didn't do radiation, but I did use a therapy that shocked a lot of people. Ivermectin. Yeah, the horse drug.
Okay. Yeah, the horse paste. Remember that? That's what they accused Joe Rogan of taking during COVID. Oh, he's taking horse paste. Ah, so funny. Anyway, yeah. So this guy, Ilyes Baghli, is also on this study. And I'm going to show you this study real quick since they keep referring to it. Let me find it real quick here. It's this document right here. So you can go look this up. It's on the internet. I was able to get a copy of it, so I know for a fact that it's on there. You can't read it here, but Ilyes Baghli, his name is the first name there. And then William Makis, his name is the second. And then I think Peter McCullough is on here and some other doctors that I mentioned. But if you go get this study off the internet, it's from the Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine. And if you type in targeting the mitochondrial stem cell connection in cancer treatment, a hybrid orthomolecular protocol, this study will come up. And my recommendation is you go to the internet, you print this study out, and you go see your oncologist and you hand them the study. Look, again, it may make you uncomfortable, okay? You may go to your doctor and feel uncomfortable. It's the old white coat syndrome. Look, I have personal experience with this. I try to talk to my cardiologist about getting off statins, and I didn't really have a good alternative. And he went on and on about how statins have single-handedly extended life expectancy in America and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, but there's all these other problems. And he, of course, his thing was, if you die of a heart attack, you're never going to even make it to those problems, which is a good point. But you need to come in armed, okay? So if you're going to talk to your oncologist about some of these treatments, you probably need to walk in with this study in hand. And like I said, it is on the internet. You can go get this study on the internet. All right, now let's jump back. I want to go to this guy, Dr. Thomas Lodi, because he's talking about fenbendazole, which fenbendazole and mebendazole are the same thing, okay? One is fenbendazole is prescribed for animals, and mebendazole is prescribed for human beings, but it's the exact same drug, okay? Just for reference there. All right, so let's listen to the Dr. Thomas Lodi clip.
Fenbendazole is not a dog dewormer. That's what we're told. It's a dog dewormer. It's not a dog dewormer. It's far more. That would be like saying water is for watering lawn. It's also necessary for every biochemical reaction on Earth. It's necessary for life to exist. It's necessary for photosynthesis to take place. It's necessary to keep the Earth warm. It's necessary for weather. Okay, like fenbendazole. Now, what does fenbendazole primarily do? Is it binds to the B tubulin, which is like these little protein structures like skeletons inside a parasite. So they can't move, they can't eat, and all that. It also blocks their ability to use glucose, and they die. But it's not just worms. Yeah, it's a dog dewormer, but it also works for cattle, for sheep, for elephants, for raccoons, for lions, for cougars, for gazelle, for deer, for bears. Did I say raccoons? Elephants. And not just worms. It gets cestodes, it gets nematodes, it gets flukes. But it also gets protozoa, like Giardia, which is not a worm, but it's a single-celled organism. That can be a parasite. So that's what it does. But it also seems to work in other ways, because they said that fenbendazole is not really approved for human use, whereas mebendazole and albendazole, its cousins, are approved for humans, and Fenbendazole is approved for animals. Why? Because they do research with fenbendazole in animals, but not with humans. And they do research with albendazole and mebendazole with humans and not with animals. And so that's why. Then comes along Joe Tippins in 2016. Small cell lung cancer, went to MD Anderson, did everything he was supposed to do, got the chemotherapy, etc., and it did what we expected to do, and that is it caused incredible metastasis. He wound up with, I think, 92 tumors, far more than they could manage, and they told him, Joe, it's time to go home, call hospice, and get ready to say your final goodbye. He went home, had a friend who is a large animal vet, and said, Joe, whenever we're treating an animal for worms and it has cancer, the cancer goes. So Joe said, I'm going to try that. He tried it. Within 3 months, his scans were clean. And to this day, his scans are clean. So he proved that it works with humans as well, right? What does it do with cancer? How does it work? As we said, it binds to the microtubules, right? Which is very similar to the certain chemotherapies called the taxanes, like Taxol and Taxotere, those kinds of things. But they're also called vinca alkaloids, binding to the microtubules. That's what it does. But in addition to that, by binding to the tubules, what does it do? It prevents mitosis, which means that the cells can't divide, they can't proliferate, they can't grow. And it also leads to apoptosis, which allows it to commit suicide. So it does both of those. Now, it also causes the cells to get arrested at what they call G2. It can't continue to go. It upregulates P53, which is the major tumor suppressor gene that we have that gets downregulated with cancer. It upregulates it, brings it back into being. Okay. And then that leads to apoptosis, and the cells will commit suicide, recycle themselves. It also does the same thing with the P53 and the P21, which is another tumor suppressor gene. So it upregulates that. It is very similar to metformin in terms of glucose control, lowering glucose, lowering fasting insulins, and things like that. But the other amazing thing it does with in terms of energy metabolism is it inhibits an enzyme called hexokinase 2. Hexokinase 2 is the final rate-limiting step that phosphorylates glucose when it enters the cell. So now it's going to go down the pathway of fermentation. It's going to ferment, all right? So, and that's upregulated in all kinds of cancers, right? It's upregulated tremendously because it wants to increase glucose uptake. The fenbendazole suppresses that. What else does it do? It also helps the immune system recognize tumors and that's pretty incredible. Now, the other thing, I don't know if you've heard of tumor-associated macrophages, but our white blood cells called macrophages, when they get into the tumor microenvironment, start working for the tumor. They go into what's called the M2 state, and they become tumor-associated macrophages. This reverses that. Yeah, that's why Joe's still alive. So, dog dewormer.
So, again, go follow this guy. Go follow Dr. Thomas Lodi. Go follow Dr. Ilyes Baghli. Go follow Dr. William Makis, Peter McCullough. These people are, especially if you have cancer, go follow them, okay? Don't let somebody tell you or scoff at you and tell you that this is not real. This is absolutely real. This is happening, okay? This is happening whether you participate in it or not, okay? By all means, participate in it, especially if you need it, if you have been diagnosed with cancer. Okay. All right. The last thing I want to cover, and then we'll probably wrap up the show because I've been talking for a while, is Dr. Makis has also seen, he's also seen results in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And these are very debilitating diseases. These are nervous system diseases, okay? And my gosh, if you know someone has Parkinson's or you know somebody has Alzheimer's, they should be taking this. It cannot hurt them, okay, to take this stuff. And so I'm going to play that real quick because that's an important finding. Now, this is very new, okay? This doesn't have 400 studies on it. It doesn't have like all that technical stuff that you just heard Dr. Lodi talk about. This is very much unknown, okay? This is when the Parkinson's and Alzheimer's realm, these are just anecdotal observations. But again, who cares? If you've got this or you've got the early onset or something, take it anyway. That's the message I think you should follow.
Another area that very few people know about
is ivermectin has effect on neurological conditions. And the ones that I've had the most success with have been Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. And again, it's a very simple thing. I discovered it by accident. There was a mouse model of sort of Parkinson. And for Alzheimer's, you can't even find the research because it's been scrubbed from Google. So there's a study that was done, a preclinical study on ivermectin and Alzheimer's, where the researchers concluded that ivermectin has an effect on Alzheimer's and should be studied. It's been scrubbed from Google. If you go on DuckDuckGo, you can actually get the abstract of that study. But in Google, it's completely scrubbed. You just see the titles, it was done in the Middle East, and it's nowhere to be found. You can't get a PDF of the article, nothing. Completely scrubbed. Parkinson's disease, I've used high doses of ivermectin, something like 60 milligrams, 72 milligrams, and these patients are responding. They have improvement in symptoms, improvement in movement. I have a patient who was barely mobile on maximum doses of standard treatment, who after a few weeks of high dose ivermectin started playing golf. And she hadn't been able to play golf for many years. And I've seen reversal in a number of Parkinson's disease patients. Now, Alzheimer's, this is where it gets really fascinating and really blew my mind. As patients started asking me, could I use it for my 90-year-old father or mother and so on, and I said, look, start with a low dose, let's see what happens, right? Because the older you are, you might have some side effects with ivermectin. If you give too high of a dose to an older person, you might get a little bit of confusion, a little bit of instability on the feet. And so start with 12 milligrams. And the family members are trying. And some of these patients are recognizing family members after just a couple of doses. They're recognizing family members they haven't recognized in years. Their memories are coming back. So they start reminiscing. They remember things. Their cognitive ability starts to come back.
Isn't it funny how all the new stuff is dangerous? It's cutting edge, but it's dangerous, like mRNA stuff or new cars. This is something that's a pet peeve of mine. These new cars, they all have small engines and turbochargers and 10-speed transmissions. And now you're starting to hear these horror stories. Like Toyota Tundra has recalled like 100,000 vehicles or not recalled, but they've had 100,000 warranty claims on failed engines. Can you imagine? And all this supposedly makes it better, makes the car better. I was talking to, these are just anecdotal stories, but I was talking to a guy at local hardware stores. It's one of these hardware stores that you can find anything there. You go in and you actually talk to somebody and they know something and you pay a little bit more, but they're really nice and they do a great job. And this guy he's got a GMC, or it's a Chevy truck. I can't remember what model, but it had 862,000 miles on it. Now think about that. 862,000 miles. You got Chevys, GMCs, and Tundras. The engines are failing after 40,000 miles. And I just think it's interesting that with all this new technology and everything's newer and supposedly better, you can't get a washing machine to last more than 5 years. Your $85,000 truck, the engine dies after 35,000 miles. Your air conditioners go out more often. Everything that we make, that we have to buy, that we've bought for decades now, it just doesn't last as long as it used to last. And you can't work on it. And they're running stories now that Ford is saying that it might even be dangerous to work on your own vehicle. What? I don't know, man. We are living in strange times for sure. But the point of all those little anecdotal stories is ivermectin is 50 years old. It's or 50 or 60-year-old medicine, okay? It's not like a new cutting-edge medicine. So consequently, with it being that old, everything that old is safe to take. Anything made in the last 15 or 20 years, you probably have to check whether it was safe to take. But anything that was made, invented 50 years ago, these things are very safe to take. That's like saying aspirin could be dangerous or penicillin could be dangerous. No, these things are very safe to take. And so the point of bringing that up is if you have one of these conditions, by all means, get your hands on some of this ivermectin and take it. You know, don't let yourself be so incapacitated that you have to go to a home and have somebody take care of you. Get your quality of life. Don't allow this medical system to just kick you to the curb. I don't know, man. I know that white coat syndrome is a real thing. Doctor comes in there, he's got a white coat. And, oh, Seth, let me tell you how it actually works. And I get it, but you got to understand, it's kind of like how we all studied the same history. Doctors all they all go to the same kind of medical school where they learn the same thing. Just like all lawyers go to law school and learn the same thing. That's why sometimes when you talk to a lawyer and you talk to them about the Constitution and things like this, they don't even really know what you're talking about because that's not what they study in law school. It's just really interesting how these professions have just been corralled into almost like a group. Doctors go to medical school so they can all learn how to think the same way. Lawyers go to law school so they can all learn how to think the same way. And the result of all that is nobody's thinking. These are the kinds of things that roll around in my head, and it just don't make sense to me why things are this way, and you can't seem to punch through it. My feeling is because everything's been centralized. The American Medical Association, we need to have a Texas Medical Association and let Texas come up with its own rules about what doctors can and can't do. The centralization of everything screws up everything. It's like the story I told you about Mao. When Mao was the guy in China, he was the top dog, right? And he and his cronies decided that a better way to farm would be to have these co-ops or whatever they did. And they implemented it. And they went around to the farms and they said, you will do this or you can catch this bullet. And so they did it, and 5 million people died. So the centralization of information, of education, of all these kinds of things, all it does is it creates an impenetrable groupthink. And I think we're suffering from that as a country. I think so much goes through the national government, the federal agencies, that we're just paralyzed. We can't think. We don't know how to think through some of these things. I know that sounds crazy. What are you talking about? So we've got more information than we've ever had. Yeah, we have more information than we've ever had. But when you go to somebody who's supposedly an authority, they scoff at you and tell you, no, we can't, I'm sorry, we can't give you ivermectin because that's a horse paste. That's what they give horses or whatever. That's not a serious answer. Okay. That's not somebody who understands the mechanisms of action and really thinks through the molecular biology of it. Okay. That's just somebody, I don't know, towing the party line. So anyway, we'll listen to a little bit more of Makis talking about this because it's pretty important, but he's more than halfway through here. So let me continue.
Literally just 12 milligrams, 24 milligrams of ivermectin for a few days, 4 or 5 days. Just try it. And I tell people, just try, report back to me. And I had one patient who was actually taken off hospice because they were doing so well. It's just incredible. And people tell me they get this precious time back with their loved ones. And especially with someone who's been suffering from Alzheimer's for many years, you feel like you've lost your loved one, and then suddenly they're back. They say, my grandma's back. She's got her sense of humor back. Her memories are back. And this is literally with a couple of pills of ivermectin. Safe, zero risk. And the moments that the family gets back are so precious. You can't buy it. It's incredible. And so I always say, give it a shot, just give it a try, just a little bit. Patients who are bedridden, not responsive, suddenly the next day they're up and about, they're eating pudding. It's just unbelievable stories. And I share all these stories on Twitter, I share them on Substack, and I highly encourage you to have a look at them sometimes.
I can't believe somebody like Michael J. Fox isn't all over this. I guarantee you, Michael J. Fox is famously, he's had Parkinson's for decades, which is really amazing, actually, to have it that long. And man, he should be on top of this. Okay. Michael J. Fox could pick up the phone and call the Today Show and come on and tell them about it. And that would be that. That would be all that would need to happen. And I don't know. It's like he was talking about there at the end. Can you imagine being bedridden? Your family has put you in an assisted living facility because they can't really help you bathe and use the bathroom or whatever. And you're in an assisted living facility and you start taking 20 milligrams of ivermectin or whatever he said. And a week later, you're up and about and you're ready to move out of the assisted living place. Can you imagine what a dramatic kind of thing that would be? That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And to me, if it's even remotely possible, people should be doing it. They should be doing it without any kind of hesitation at all. Get your hands on whatever dose he just said. I think it was pretty high for Parkinson's. It's like 60 milligrams or something for Parkinson's. Maybe you start with 30 and then you go up to 40. But on the Alzheimer's, he was talking about 20 milligrams or something, which is very safe. No side effects. I'm going to talk about it with my family for sure. All right. The last thing I want to put up is just while I wrap up the show, I want to put up this schedule of Dr. Makis's. He's already mentioned these quantities and things like that, but this is just so you can refer to it at a later date. And again, I encourage you to go look into this. Go get an X account, okay? And follow Dr. William Makis, follow Dr. Ryan Cole, follow Dr. Peter McCullough, follow Dr. Ilyes Baghli, follow Dr. Thomas Lodi, follow these people and get educated, okay? Especially if you know somebody in your family that could benefit from this, tell them about it, get them following it and learning about it. Look, I really think COVID really highlighted this for me. If you want to live a healthy life, it's really up to you. You're going to have to figure it out because these doctors, I don't know if you've been lately. I just went a couple weeks ago. I go in there, the nurse takes my blood pressure. She asks me some questions. She's on the computer the whole time, typing stuff in. The doctor comes in. I get up on the table, breathe in, breathe out, breathe normally, goes over my medications, asks me a couple questions, asks me if I'm exercising, and then he runs, he leaves. Oh, he also asked me how are my refills? Do I need any refills? And then he leaves. That's it. It's like it's 3 minutes with the doctor. And so there's just not the days of them taking your shirt off and examining you and looking under your arms and looking down your throat. They don't even look in my ears. I can't remember the last time they looked in my throat or my ears. I guess if I come in with a sore throat or something, they'll look in my throat or my ears. But they don't look in your eyes. I can remember going to the doctor and they would look in your eyes, they would look in your ears, they'd look in your throat. They'd have you take your shirt off. They'd look under your arms. They'd press where your lymph nodes are and all this kind of stuff. Man, the doctor barely touches you now. It's just weird. So I really think, and then they charge you $200 or whatever it is. So I really think if you want to live, okay, if you want to live a healthy life and you want to live and not be disease ridden, I think you're just going to have to accept the responsibility of doing your own research. Doing your own research is just reading. That's all it is, reading. And today you can watch videos, okay? But 50 years ago, doing your own research was just reading, okay? Now doing your own research is somehow that's a bad thing. Like, why don't you just go ask the doctor? They're the ones that knows everything. Yeah, but the problem is they don't know everything, or at least they're not telling me everything. And so I just think if you want to live a healthy life, if you want to try to not end up with some sort of disease, you're just going to have to do your own research. You're going to have to take responsibility for your own health. And I think this is just the world we live in. I'm not telling you not to go to the doctor, but nobody knows your body like you know it. Okay. And the next step is taking responsibility and digging into, spending a little time looking into symptoms and what things might be, and, you know, looking for ulterior things. One of the things I've talked to on the show one time was about this guy, Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka is not a doctor, but he's done all this research on what's called methylation. And basically, the long short of it is, whatever you have, okay, whether it's a cold or high blood pressure or ADD, any of these things, he says they're all curable because you just need to know the methylation path for whatever the disease is. And he says it's either because your body is getting too much of something or not enough of something. Now, that's a pretty extraordinary claim. But Dana White, go look up Dana White. He's the guy that runs the UFC. He famously had off the charts blood pressure. And he went to several doctors and they couldn't get it down. It was dangerously high, okay, dangerously high blood pressure. He found Gary Brecka. He went to Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka did a methylation test on him, figured out what he was deficient in. I don't remember what it was. Started supplementing his diet. He changed his diet and supplemented his diet with some of this stuff that he was deficient in, and his blood pressure came down. And you got Dana White saying he's never going to go to another doctor. So there are radical things happening in the medical field. And if you only rely on your doctor, you're going to miss out on some stuff, and you might die sooner than you otherwise should. So with that, I think I'll wrap up the show. I'll put links to all this in the show notes page. You can go click on them there and start following some of these people, and comment. If you have a chance, go to YouTube. If you want to see some of these charts that I put up, go to YouTube. And while you're there, you can subscribe YouTube. It'll help the algorithm run more viewers to the show. That's assuming YouTube allows it to go up. I'm talking about some controversial stuff here. Google may just say, nope, can't post that. And if they do, we'll be talking about that in another show, because that's interesting. We're talking about saving lives here. And because it's not in the approved standard of care, let's screw that. Let's just let everybody die. What? No. You don't want to let people die because your precious standard of care is being challenged. That's ridiculous, right? So let's try to get rid of that thinking and definitely talk to your friends and family members about this. They can choose not to do it. That's fine. But they can also choose to do it, and potentially it helps them out. We'll see. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for listening. Come in a few days. Actually, I'm going to be on vacation for a few days, and then I'm going to be back for a day or two, and then on vacation again. So I might not have a show for a while. So stand by. As soon as I can get one up, I'll put something up. But when I do put something back up, come in and listen. Love to have you on Who Gets to Decide. Peace. See you guys.